Good evening, everyone. I am Patty Smolin, a business librarian at the Schaumburg Township District Library, and I am presenting to you from the central location. And we are still doing Zoom programs while our renovation nears its final stage. The good news is we are on target, both time-wise and money-wise, so I'm very pleased for that. We haven't needed to close for any of these reasons either. We are putting up those pardon our dust signs, but by the end of April, we should be able to welcome you so you can view the entire second floor and have a tour of its renovated state. So tonight, I want to welcome Jean Walters and Linda Dressler that came to us in February to talk to us about the top 10 questions for sellers or from sellers. For or from?
About.
And tonight we're doing it from the buyer's perspective. So with that said, if you have any questions, you are welcome to put them into Q&A or into the chat, and our speakers will stop periodically and ask me to monitor some of those questions. I believe that I have sent out handouts to everyone that I sent the link out today. For any reason you didn't get those, my email address is in the chat. You're welcome to get in touch with me and I'd be happy to resend them. And with that said, I think we're just going to get started. I think all those logistics have been checked off. I want to welcome you both back. Thank you so much. And for those that were waiting for the sellers session recording to be on our YouTube channel, I had a tech glitch and I wasn't able to do it last week as expected, but I will be putting them side by side soon. I'm aiming for tomorrow. So welcome back, Jean and Linda.
Thank you, Patty. Thank you for having us again. We're glad to be here. The spring market has sprung, wouldn't you say?
Yes.
We like to say that normally the spring market starts the weekend after Super Bowl Sunday. Living where we live, right? It's not very conducive to go see homes in December and January, although you can February, right? But people are really starting to think about it come after Super Bowl Sunday. My name is Linda Dressler, and I'm with Remax Suburban in Schaumburg, right on Roselle Road. I'm by Golf and Roselle. And
I am Gene Walters with Home Trust Mortgage. My office is located over near Woodfield Mall in the Schaumburg Corporate Center.
We're here tonight to talk to you a little bit about what the market is doing and the process of buying a home. A lot of times people have questions, you do research online, you get answers from friends and family, and we just figured we'd give it to you from the professional standpoint. I've been doing this for 17 years. I'm a full-time realtor. I sell between 2 and 3 dozen homes per year. And love what I do, although I started in 2007, which was a rough time to start. But now it's a little challenging too for our buyers, and we want to help you be able to navigate how to get through it. So if you are here for Home Buyers Top 10 Questions, then you're in the right space. We just did that. Is there anything else you want to say about yourself?
Well, I've been in the business for over 25 years and born and raised in Wakanda. So I'm out in Schaumburg now and just trying to bring everybody some happiness in their home buying process because it could be a little bit of a grueling process. So I make sure that not only do I do the things that I think people would like to hear and see when they're going through the process, but help others that might be working with maybe their own mortgage person to help make sure that they can confirm that they're on the right track as well.
That's true. So the real estate market right now is still low inventory, which is troublesome for a lot of buyers and sellers, actually. So I looked at the market right before we started about 5 minutes ago. And so for the village of Schaumburg, we have 20 detached single-family homes for sale in all of Schaumburg right now that are currently being marketed.
Not a lot.
That's not a lot. The smallest or the lowest price is a 3-bedroom, 1-bath for $299,900, which is lucky because we hardly see them under 3 anymore. Of course, the largest is $1,399,000, but that's 5 bedrooms, 4.5 baths. So that's a rather big house. There are attached dwellings, which is a condo, a townhome, something where you're paying a homeowners association usually. 32 of those are for sale, which isn't bad. But a 1 bedroom, 1 bath condo will cost you about $155,000 right now. And there's a 2 bedroom, 3.5 bath and a 3 bedroom, 2.5 bath right around 600,000. So I don't know what your budget is, but that's what's currently on the market right now. When I say it is a chaotic market is the best way for me to put it. You really want a real estate professional that knows what they're doing, because their experience is what's going to guide you through the offer process and the whole buying process as seamlessly as possible in something that is not as easy for you, right? We will try to keep emotion out of it in our advice for you, right? By using our experience. It can be a very emotional process. And it's not that we're not asking you to be emotional, but a good agent will help navigate you through those ups and downs of what's going on. So some of the things that we're seeing in the market right now, well, here we'll start with square one. Square one, because there's so little on the market, and typically a buyer should have this even when it's not a seller's market, they should be pre-approved for a certain dollar amount, because you as a buyer may say, well, I know in my budget I can afford $2,500 a month. But there are other things that go into play when you're talking about a pre-approval, aren't there?
Correct. Yeah, there's some companies will call your what you think is a pre-approval, it's actually pre-qualification. So the differences basically are that with a pre-qualification, sometimes you're estimating the income. So you might tell your mortgage person that, oh yeah, I make around this much money. Or I have around this much in assets. The biggest difference, I guess you could say, between the two would be they may not look at your credit report. A lot of times a pre-qualification would be just asking you what your debts are and maybe writing it on a piece of paper, and not really verifying with a credit report, whether it be a soft pull or a hard pull, what your actual debts are. And then not really verifying information. So the pre-approval is going to be a step further. It's going to be a little bit more concrete for you, because we're going to look at the credit. We're going to look at, in general, income documentation. If you're a salaried individual, or maybe if you work 40 hours a week, it might not be as crucial, but there might be things that we can add a little bit more extra income in there by seeing those things. So it's very important from a seller's perspective that you're pre-approved and not just pre-qualified. So you could have a stronger, a better or higher offer, but if you're not pre-approved and you're just pre-qualified, then they may take another offer over yours.
Something that you would need to know as a buyer is that pre-approval will go in with the contract. So the actual letter that comes from your lender that tells you what you qualify for, what you're approved for. Now, of course, that doesn't mean that you've already got the mortgage, right? It's not set in stone, but it is the step further, and not just stated income and stated debt, right? So that the seller knows that you're serious now, especially in this market. I had today, unfortunately, an announcement to one of my buyers. This weekend, Friday, I had one buyer. Saturday, I had two, and Sunday had another one. So 4 buyers look at the same property, because there really aren't that many for sale. And they called for their highest and best offer by Sunday, and were presenting today. And it was unfortunate. I had to tell my buyers that they didn't get the property, but there were 28 offers. So imagine if you don't have a pre-approval, your offer is merely just paper, right? Because it's not showing that you have the cash in the bank or the ability to buy. So that's why it's so important.
So whoever you're using for your mortgage, the listing agent most likely will call that person and ask them, have you seen these documents? Have you seen credit? Have you run, how do things look? I mean, we can't obviously divulge personal information, but we have to be able to say, yes, we've seen this or we've done that. So the sooner you can get the documents in, the better, even if you might not be looking to purchase for a month or two, or it might take you a month or two to find a property. Just your mortgage person having those documents will help you a lot. Not only that, not only will it help you for your offer, but when you get an offer accepted, now it's go time. You've got a lot of things going on. We're going to go through some of these things, but you're going to have a home inspection you need to do. You're going to be getting all your, dotting your I's and crossing your T's on all that with your, maybe a mover or something like that. The last thing that you would want to be doing is also gathering all these documents.
That you've
because
already packed in a box and put in
that
the
you may have
garage
already
and
packed away. So to get that done and out of the way in the beginning is just less stress for you.
absolutely, absolutely. How long does it take to buy a house? Well, the actual process, once you're under contract, right?
Right.
Takes typically 4 to 6 weeks. I know that Jean has done them more quickly, right?
If we need to.
If you need to, but that is again all dependent on how soon you get your documents in. If he asks for something and it takes you a week to get it in, that's going to delay the process, right? If it's not in a timely fashion. Now, I would say in this market, if you are looking to move, let's say July 1st, and it normally takes 4 to 6 weeks to close, which brings us back to at least May, right? We may need to start looking mid-March, right? Through that time, because inventory is so low and competition is so high. It will really depend on your finances, your status, your flexibility, your willingness to listen to the expert when the expert tells you the best way to put together an offer. I can tell you right now in Schaumburg, I just ran stats for somebody else. Listings are going for 99.6% of their list price. So while as a buyer, of course, we want to get it at a discount, we want to buy it for the least amount possible. Unfortunately, that is not happening right now in a competitive market. It's like supply and demand, right?
Right.
The less supply with a high demand, it pushes up the price. So please forgive me for being the bearer of the market's bad news. But if you have a professional that can walk you through it and explain it to you and educate you, you'll be good. And this will start you on that way, on that track.
And if you're looking to move within, 6 months or so, it's people sometimes ask, is it too early to start looking? And it really isn't, because you might go through an offer or two, or there might not be homes that come on the market in your area that are what you want or what you like. So it might take you a month or two to actually find a place, and then another month or two to close. And for example, if you close on July 2nd, your first mortgage payment is not going to be August 1st. It's not going to be until September 1st. So you do have a little bit of time there that you don't have to worry about maybe making a rent and a mortgage payment in the same month.
Correct.
So you can strategically, place your closing when you're negotiating.
Correct. I also have some buyers wherein they're moving a little bit further out, and we set up a search sooner than they'll actually be physically going out to look at properties, just to manage expectations, to see what's available for the dollar amount they want to spend. What are your search criteria? Let's see what's out there right now that fits your search criteria. And then let's have a discussion if we have to modify, You know, what's your absolutely have to have? You know, I know you want 2 baths, but will 1.5 baths work, right? So it's having those discussions and having the time to have those discussions, which is very helpful.
Right, if you say, I want to look at homes with 2 baths and I don't want anything less than that. And then a home pops up somewhere that wasn't on the list that your realtor sent you, that might be why, because it was a 1.5 bath. And you're thinking, well, why didn't this come up on my list? So, widening opening that up a little bit might give you some more options.
A wider net is what I
Yes,
call it. Let's
casting-
cast a wider net. Yeah, absolutely. Well, what does a realtor do? We do a lot of stuff.
I ask that all the time.
Oh, stop. I used to think when I first got in, I'm like, oh, look, I get to go look at pretty houses. I would go look at pretty houses, and then I'd come home to my house with my 3 sons and my husband and be like, oh, those other houses, some of them were much prettier than my house. But I do that. Yes, I do. But you get my expertise, you get my advice, you get my experience, you get my professionalism. I'm very communicative. Hopefully you have that with whatever realtor you hire, right? If you're a texter, I'll text you. If you're an emailer, I'll email you. If you like picking up the phone, I'll pick up the phone. We can tell you about our area. We're licensed within the entire state, but I'll tell you, I'm not going to Springfield to sell a house, but I have a wide network of professional colleagues and friends that I can refer somebody to, even if it's not in this state. It could be in California. It can even be internationally. I can find an expert who works much like me to work for you. So that's a neat thing. But I do work within about 60 minutes drive of here. Of course, my backyard I'm most familiar with because I show it more often. So, you know, the suburbs right around here, you've got Hoffman and Rolling Meadows and Schaumburg and Elk Grove Village, you know, so, you know, the ones right here. But you just want to make sure that your realtor knows the area that they're working in and that they have experience, because the lack of experience, if you work with a friend or a family member who may be part-time or, you know, maybe newer, could cost you the house of your dreams.
Realtors right now, it's tougher now for them than I've ever seen it. People think that, well, you know, properties are going off the market really quick and there's a lot of offers. Well, that's a lot more difficult than a market where they only get one offer every once in a while, and then they negotiate and then they, you know, close the transaction. When you have multiple offers and when you're whether you're on the buyer side or the seller side, they have a much more difficult time right now. They're doing a lot more work for you then you might not even realize it. So it's definitely very important to make sure whoever your realtor is, that they are experienced in this type of market. And some people say, well, maybe I won't use a realtor. Well, if you're a buyer and you don't have your own representation, then you're going in and trying to do things with a listing agent that their job really is to get the most amount of money for that seller. So having your own agent, letting that agent work for you is, you know, generally one of the best things that you can do.
I find there are many buyers out there who will call from the sign and call the listing agent, which means if you do that 5 times, you've now spoken to 5 different agents who have 5 different levels of experience, 5 different, very different opinions. You're better off getting one agent to show you all 5 houses, right? Because then you get somebody working just for you solely.
Right. Yeah, it's really important to respect, you know, the realtor's time, and you really want to make sure that you're working with someone that you gel with as well.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, interview.
If the personality doesn't click, then
Right.
yeah.
And you know what? If you're a Cubs fan and your realtor's a White Sox fan, that's okay.
Maybe. Not for you. I'm a Cubs fan. How much do you have to pay the realtor as a home buyer? This is very controversial right now. You may have heard about lawsuits that are happening, that are about commission. It used to be, before I started in real estate, that everyone worked for the seller, period. Even the people bringing in a buyer, right? So what we decided in the state of Illinois was, okay, we need buyer's agency. These buyers need to be represented as well. But the buyers are being represented still on behalf of the seller, which is kind of complicated because the seller wants to sell the house, right? So the seller agrees to a commission price to pay the person who lists the house, and typically also the person who helps sell the house, which would be the buyer's agent. So the slide says that you pay nothing, but ultimately you are getting the loan that is paying for the home, that then is paying the commission, that then is doled out to the brokerages and the agents. Does that make sense? So that's why I would encourage you always to go out with somebody, right, as a buyer's agent. See if you click. If you click and you think that you gel and everything's good, continue to work with them, because they're not getting paid until you have something under contract, until you're finished. So I had a buyer once tell me, Linda, guess what number house this is? I'm like, what number is this? He's like 50. I'm like, woo! Which meant we went to 50 showings, and that still wasn't the house they bought.
And a big misconception is that if you don't use your own agent and you use the seller's agent, that you're getting a better price in the house because you're not having to have that commission go to your buyer's agent. But that's not what happens. The seller agrees on a specific percentage to pay out, whether it be, let's say it's 5%, whether it be 2.5 and 2.5 to two different agents. If there aren't two different agents, then it's 5% to the one agent. So you're not getting a better deal. You're just losing your representation.
It all depends on what the listing agreement contract says, but ultimately you are in your loan paying the commission. So you should have somebody who's working for you and that you like.
Correct.
So what's your best advice, Jean, for first-time home buyers?
Well, my best advice basically is, start with the pre-approval. Get pre-approved first, see what you can do. Make sure a professional is looking at your overall scenario in case there's something you didn't think about, or that maybe you didn't know, was on your credit report. Your mortgage professional should ask you questions like, have you co-signed for anybody on a car loan? And that might make you think, oh yeah, that's right. 2 years ago, I did co-sign for somebody.
But I don't pay any of it.
Right. It's still a debt against you.
Oh.
But if the mortgage person you're working with doesn't ask you that question, they might see that on the credit report and think it's automatically one of your debts and not question it. And now you're on paper affording less than what you actually can afford because you're not making that mortgage payment, and we can prove that. So you want to make sure that you're definitely using a professional in the business that's not only been around a while, but that has done a lot of transactions. I could be in the business for 25 years, but if I only do one transaction a month or 5 transactions a year, that's not very much experience as someone like, let's say myself, who does 5 to 10 on average over the 25 years per month. Usually, closer to 20, but that's a lot more experience than, I could maybe was only in the business for 5 or 10 years, but if I'm doing that many loans, I would have a lot more experience than somebody that was in the business for 25 years and was only doing, one a month or one every other month.
The interesting thing, and he said experience a number of times, and I kind of told a new agent in my office, he's like, oh my gosh, there's so much drama, these things are going on in this transaction. And I said, you should be glad for every little piece that you're calling drama, because it's not drama. It's just something that's not of the ordinary outline of a transactional procedure. And that is what equates to experience. So if you think of someone who does it 5 times a year versus someone who does it 10 times a month, think of all the twists and turns, and the number of transactions someone's done that they have experienced now. Oh yeah, that happened one time, 3 years ago. This is what we did to fix it. So that's very true. when it
Probably
comes to
the
professionals.
next biggest piece of advice, which is probably on par with that, from me would be, don't wait to save up more money.
Mm.
Because you might think, I'm gonna wait a year to save up another 10,000, but now the price of the home is 20,000 more, or even 30,000 more. Or in some cases, like recently, it might be 50,000 more. So by waiting to save up from 3% down to 10% down, or maybe to 20% down, you could be spending $75,000 more for a property. So when you're ready to start thinking about it, talk to your mortgage professional and your realtor and ask those questions and let them tell you what things have looked like in the past couple of years and what we project them to be in the future. And what does a 5% down look like versus a 10% down? I think you'll find that the difference in payment is not that much from going with the different percentages. And you'll also find that in that same boat, the taxes will affect your payment more than your down payment will.
Isn't it true that like $10,000 equates to about $50 a month difference?
Now it's about $80.
About 80.
Yeah.
Yeah, because of interest, right?
Yeah, because the interest rates are low.
Okay. All right. And for me, my best advice for first-time home buyers is probably the first is finding the right professional to work with. So yes, you want to get referrals from friends and family and people who've worked with somebody that they've liked and that they trust, that they know, like, and trust. Those are the top 3, right?
Yeah.
But also, once you've been given names, it's okay for you to Google that person to find out information about them. I know that I've gone to appointments and forgotten that Google's a thing. I don't know why. And they'll go, oh yeah, I checked you out on Google. I'm like, oh, well, yeah, that's fine. But it just is, it's a weird thing, right? And then also you can interview more than one person. Go ahead and interview a few people before you even go out with them. See how you click. See if you like what they're saying to you. If they speak to you in a manner that works, right? Because there's some people who can speak above and below and then just right, like Goldilocks, right? So that would be my best, is if you have the team that helps you get through it, that you really click with. I think I keep saying that, click with, but you know what I mean.
Believe it or not, I've seen realtors completely disregard what the buyer is wanting and trying to get them in a different direction based on what they think should happen. I think I even had, you might have been part of this too, where not you, but a realtor was trying to show them different types of properties that were completely different than what they actually wanted, and maybe even towards an investment point of view. And you just want to make sure the realtor is listening to what you're saying and really taking that to heart. Same with the mortgage person.
Absolutely.
For that matter.
If you're working with someone who thinks that a cookie cutter scenario fits all the way across the board, you need to interview someone else.
This is when I do my Frasier imitation and I'm listening.
Right.
I just wanted to backtrack. You may have covered this. I've been paying attention, but we did have something in Q&A. And we did talk about pre-approval, I believe, but the question was, how long is pre-approval good for?
Oh, good question. No, we didn't quite cover that. So basically the long answer is a pre-approval is basically good for as long as your information remains the same. So to expand on that a little bit, if you get pre-approved today and tomorrow you go out and buy a car, well, that changes your pre-approval. So to say it's good for 30 days, 60 days, 90 days would not be be correct in that scenario. So if you go, 60, 90 days and your income stays the same, your debt stays the same, you haven't purchased anything, you didn't go buy a car, then your pre-approval will still be good, even, 6 months to a year later. What you'd have to do is maybe update the credit report at some point, or something as simple as updating the date of the letter. So a credit report typically is good for 90 to 120 days. But sometimes a listing agent or a seller might want to see a pre-approval updated within 30 days.
I would do 60 at tops as a listing agent, because I'd want to make sure all the financial information was the same. And it's just a check-in with the lender then. If I'm the listing agent and I see an older pre-approval than 60 days, when I make the phone call to check on the, on the pre-approval itself, I may just say, this hasn't, this was issued in January. Have you checked the docs or checked in with the buyer since then to make sure that it's okay?
Yeah, but that's a very good question.
Good question. We're flying through them. We're already done with question number 5. What's question number 6? Oh, this is a Gene question. Go ahead.
All right, so the 3 things, according to the slide, that your credit scores will affect will be your down payment, the types of loan available, and your interest rate. So the down payment, there's different types of loans. There's government loans and there's Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac types of loans. You might have heard those terms. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac will allow as little as 3% down. The government FHA loans would be 3.5% down, and VA loans would be 100% financing in most cases. So your credit score could affect what type of loan you do, but also what type of down payment. So if you have a lower credit score, you're considered a higher risk. So the lower down payment loans with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac might not apply to you because it might be too high of a risk, where FHA is a little more lenient on those types of situations with the lower credit scores. So that kind of ties in with the types of loans available and the down payment. Now, the interest rate is it's been a little bit different now than it ever has. I'm going to use the term programs, but they're not really programs. They're more of guidelines and benefits for people that make under a certain level, and that certain level changes depending on where you're buying. So there's 2 or 3 different tiers, and depending on your income level, your interest rate could fluctuate regardless of your credit score. So you could have a lower credit score, like a 620, 630 credit score, and get a better interest rate than someone that has a 800 credit score, depending on your income level and how much you're putting down. So your credit scores will affect your interest rates depending on your income level. But the higher your credit score in general, the better. So it really just depends on your overall scenario right now, which isn't normally the case. Normally the case is your lower credit score, you're getting a higher interest rate. Obviously we want to have your credit score as high as possible. So do you. And a good mortgage professional will be able to tell you, hey, these are the things you can do to increase your credit scores. Now, they're not going to, pay your bills for you or, pay off a collection or something, but the good mortgage professional will be able to let you know, don't pay these off because paying these off might hurt you, but pay these off because these will, help you with getting your credit score higher, because maybe maybe they're newer, or maybe they have a smaller balance. You can pay more of them off, or maybe your balance on your credit cards are past the 25 or 50% limit of your limit, and you could pay them down by a couple $100 and it affect your score, within a month or 2. So there are definitely some benefits to having the better credit scores, but having lower credit scores doesn't mean you can't get a loan, because you can get an FHA loan under 580 on a credit score. Conventional loans, they typically want to see 620, but there have been instances where we've gone below 620 with enough down payment and enough compensating factors. So it really just depends on your overall scenario.
Well, there's something you haven't talked about. yet, and I don't know that it's in the slide, but it probably could have been something we talked about earlier, but there's something that buyers aren't aware of, and that's the debt to income ratio, right?
Mhm.
I know that, like I said in my one example, I think I can afford $2,500, but if your debt to income ratio doesn't allow that because you have too much debt, your lending professional can also tell you, these 3 things you need to pay off to lower your debt
Right.
so that you can qualify for a better mortgage.
Sometimes it could be better to put less money down and pay off a credit card or pay off a car loan to help you qualify for more, so your overall debt actually becomes better. So yeah, it really depends on that overall scenario, but
Absolutely. All right.
cool. Anything I didn't cover there?
No, but it looks like there might be a question. I
Oh.
just can't, it's too small. I can't see it.
Here?
Yeah.
The question was in chat and it was just a repeat of what I put in from
Oh,
Q&A.
okay. Oh,
We're good.
Someone's asking, do people with high student loan debt even have a chance in owning a home or condo? That's actually a really good question too, because student loan debt is treated differently than other debt. So in circumstances where a student loan debt has a zero payment because it's in deferment, or it's on an IBR, an income-based repayment plan, we will use a certain percentage of the balance as a potential future payment based on that student loan balance. So Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac they'll use, I'm sorry, yeah, FHA and Freddie Mac use 0.5% of the balance, and Fannie Mae uses 1%. So Fannie Mae is a little bit less lenient on the student loan debt. We're hoping they might come around at some point, but we're able to choose one or the other. So you want to talk to your mortgage professional about that if you do have some student loan debt. But it doesn't exclude you from buying a property unless they're in like a collection state. Then that could possibly cause you to not be able to buy anything until that's resolved. And by that being resolved, could just be that you have a payment arrangement. Set up a payment arrangement and have a few months or a year under that payment arrangement, and you can show and prove it. They don't accept a payment arrangement that you created yourself. So it would have to be something in writing from the student loan company that you're supposed to be paying, X amount of dollars.
what was I saying? It's the experience.
Yes.
So yes, you can buy a home if you have
Yes,
student
absolutely.
loans, but you need to talk to the right person who knows how to navigate that.
Correct.
All right. Are there special home buying programs out there that our buyers here might want to know about?
Yes, there are. So as everybody has said, probably since you were a kid, nothing is free, right? So there are various programs for home buyers, and they've taken a lot of these programs and have given them to non-first-time home buyers as well. In most cases, there's some income restrictions and credit score requirements and things like that, but there are down payment assistance programs that you can qualify for that are state funded or not state funded. And the qualifying terms are different for all of them, but there's always a cost to those free programs. You might have a higher interest rate. You might not be able to buy as much. They might not let you use as much of your income. Going back to the debt ratio. Well, maybe we should talk a little more about that too.
Okay.
So those are some of the things that might happen. And then some of the programs you have to pay back that down payment assistance. Some of them it's forgivable, but forgivable after a certain period of time. So there's pluses and minuses. The programs are really designed for people that have no other way to come up with a down payment, and paying a little bit higher interest rate on your mortgage or a little bit higher payment is better than paying 100% interest, which would be your renting.
Absolutely.
There-
Put the money in your own pocket instead of the
Exactly.
landlord's
Yeah.
pocket.
And there are programs or guidelines that allow for non-down payment assistance for you to get a better interest rate by and putting 3% down. So if you're a first-time home buyer,
Define that first for them. First time home buyer doesn't mean it's actually the first time you've bought a house.
correct, a first-time home buyer is someone who has not owned a property in the last 3 years. So technically, you can have owned a home before and still qualify as a first-time home buyer. So those types of programs would be that don't have down payment assistance attached to them will be the ones that allow 3% down on a conventional or a Fannie Mae Freddie Mac basis. FHA is still going to be 3.5% regardless. So the government decided to take all the benefits of first-time home buyers and give them to everybody a long time ago. So with FHA, you have whether you're first-time home buyer or not, you have the benefit of the down payment for 3.5% versus 5 or 10%. With the conventional loans, if you're a first-time home buyer, you can do the 3% down, or if you make less than a certain amount of money, depending on what area you're in, then you can also do the 3%, and you get a much better interest rate as of right now if you qualify for one of those types of loans where your income is not over a certain level. So your mortgage professional can see how all that works for you specifically, but there are definitely programs out there to make it a little bit easier to become a homeowner.
But not all mortgage professionals can do all the programs,
no,
right? So you
absolutely not.
need to
Yep,
make
yep.
sure
Yeah.
that your mortgage professional can do the program if there's something specific you're looking for.
Correct.
I see
Yeah.
Patty, that must mean another question.
It does. It means another 2 questions, actually.
All right.
From the first question that was talking about the high student loans, just a little bit, that person was talking about government loans.
Mhm.
And what if the government loans are paid off, but they still have additional private student loans?
That's-
And then there's another
you-
question. And then there's another question. If you put down less, do you have to have mortgage insurance?
So in some cases, you can do without the mortgage insurance. The challenge with those instances is that you're basically either prepaying the mortgage insurance or you're taking a higher interest rate to not have the mortgage insurance.
So you're still paying for it.
So you're still
In a way.
in some way, you're still paying for it. Yes. So my caution to you would be not to be afraid of mortgage insurance. It goes away after a period of time, and it's not as expensive as most people think it is. It is credit score dependent, so that might be another
Yeah,
thing
credit
on
makes
that,
a difference.
where credit scores make a difference. Your income level and credit score, and then how much of your income you're spending on your debt will all affect that mortgage insurance amount that you would be paying. And a lot of people, I can't tell you the number of people that tell me, oh, that's it, because they thought it would be a lot more than
Hundreds and hundreds of dollars or something, yeah. Now, Jean, of course, has told you that there are lender home buying programs, but not all of you are going to be here tonight as first-time home buyers. I recognize that. There are ways that we can help you as a realtor try to get credits, right? Closing cost credits, which might help you if you need help with liquidity, right? We can hopefully write that into an offer as your realtor, but you should be able to talk to them about it. If you're leaving one home and wanting to go bigger or go smaller, but you're still using a lender, or you don't have a lot of cash, right? That you need to have to get into another home. Jean and I have had this discussion quite a bit lately about a bridge loan, right? Can you tell them a little bit about that? Because you right now in this competitive market, if you are contingent on selling a home or closing a home, it might be very difficult. If you're in, a multiple offer situation, there could be other offers deemed better because they don't have those contingencies. So this is a solution to that.
So a bridge loan would be a loan that bridges the gap. So if you own a home that has equity in it, you could take out a loan on top of that loan, and we call it a bridge loan. The bridge loan would be used for the down payment on the new property and or to pay off debt to help you qualify. Now, you do have to qualify for both mortgage payments, not the bridge loan, but the mortgage payment that you might already have on your current property that you're moving out of, if you have one. So you'd still have to qualify for both, but you could use some of that money from your equity in the bridge loan to pay off some debt to help you qualify and then put your down payment on the new place. So you're not having to put in your offer as a contingent upon your sale offer.
That makes sense. And if you're going to consider a bridge loan or taking money out of the equity of your home, you need to do that before it's listed, right?
No, bridge loans.
Bridge loans you don't? Okay.
Home equity line
Home
of
equity
credit.
line of credit you need to do before you're
The bridge
listed.
loan, they're expecting you to sell that house, and we want your bridge loan paid off in 60 to 120 days.
Okay. And there are just some fees that go along with
Yeah,
that, right?
yeah.
Okay.
Nothing's free.
Nothing's free. I see a number 3 on the Q&A, but I don't know if that's something new that came in.
Reading it. So when there are multiple bids on a house that you are interested in, how do you know where your bid stands among all the bids? Can you increase your bid?
This is a very interesting in this market right now. So there are lots of times where a listing agent will say, we have multiple offers. Please have your buyer submit their highest and best. And they give you a deadline. They won't tell you where you are in the pile, right? Because there are a lot of things about an offer that are negotiable or that could be seen as positive for the seller. The closing date could make a difference.
Make a big difference.
The amount of earnest money you're willing to put down, your liquidity, like maybe the percentage of a loan you're getting makes a difference to the seller. They consider it less of a risk if it's, 20% down loan versus a 5% down loan. Doesn't mean it is, but this is in the seller's mind. You may say you want it as is, right? So there are lots of things on a contract that make it negotiable. My advice to any buyer in this market is to always go in with your highest and best. And the reason for this is, for me as a listing agent, to even call for highest and best or tell another agent that there are other offers on the table, I have to have my seller's permission. If my seller doesn't give me permission to disclose that, I cannot. So you may not get a chance for highest and best. You may have a seller who just wants to see the 5 offers that are coming in and will negotiate with the best one that comes in. So it really is having the professional who you're working with offer you the tools in your tool belt to be able to use when those scenarios happen. So I'm just going to take a few minutes, if you don't mind, to explain what some of those tools are. And you'll have to go more in depth with your particular agent, right? Your broker, for their take on them. You're only getting my opinion at this point. So I already told you some of them that are written on a contract. A lot of the sellers right now are asking you to take the property as is. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't cancel the contract if you have an inspection and you find something egregious, like the foundation is cracked and it worries you. You have 5 days after you have a signed contract, 5 business days to get out of the contract for any reason other than price. So you could have it inspected in that 5 days. You could find something that scares you. You could get out of the contract and get your earnest money back. If in fact, I know where I was going next. If in fact, oh my gosh, when am I at a loss for words?
You won't lose your earnest money.
You won't lose your earnest money. You should be able to get it back within that 5 days. So some people are waiving the inspection. Now, I, as a buyer's agent, would never suggest you do that. But if it's really competitive, you think the house looks clean, Uncle Joe came with you on a showing, Uncle Joe thinks the house is clean if he knows, if he knows houses, right? Looked at the furnace for you, did some things, that's a personal choice. I would never advise that. Some of the extra tools are, there are people who are offering higher than list price. As I already told you, things are going 99 to 100% of list price right now. So they're offering higher than list price. There are people who are offering an escalation clause, which means that they're offering to pay a certain dollar amount over the highest and best. Now, when I write that for my clients, my clients will offer, let's say, $1,000 over, and I don't just say highest and best, I say verified highest and best. Because if I'm your buyer's agent, I'm protecting you. So I want to see that offer, right? To verify that there was actually an offer written. So page 1 is the price. And I also ask the listing agent for page 13, which gives me the agent information. And I will call the agent to make sure an offer was made at that price to protect you. So it kind of springboards you, right, to hire. Now, what if there are 10 escalation clauses in play? Like I said, this one today it just had 28 offers on this one property. I had 4 buyers go look at. You can put a cap on your escalation clause and say up to this dollar amount. But then what happens is if there's anyone who can go higher, it's going to springboard over yours, right, to the next one. You can leave it an undisclosed amount. That is my preference, in the hopes that then it's going to go higher, that the agent will say, well, the highest right now after all the escalation clauses that are disclosed have gone up to 390. Your client would be at 395 with your escalation clause. Are they good with it? Now, does that agent have to make that phone call? No. Does that seller have to accept escalation clauses? No. They may say, I don't want any escalation clauses. I just want bottom line how high this person's willing to go. And the thing that's scary about that from a buyer standpoint, of course, is, well, if I tell them 390, but the next highest bid was only 370, then there's a $20,000 gap. I'm overpaying for that property. But you, as the buyer, have to be able to sleep either way, whether or not you're going to get it or not get it. So you're the only one who can come up with that price from your budget, from your standpoint, right? What you can afford. I can give you all the experience in the world, but I'm not the one who has to pay that mortgage amount. So that's an escalation clause. There are also people turning in what's called an appraisal gap waiver. And this is where it gets tricky when things start springboarding, right? If the data and the market show that the highest one sold for that model in the neighborhood is 380,000, and now you've springboarded to 395, and the appraiser comes in and the appraiser agrees with the market data that says 380, that means there's a disparity between what you've offered and what your lender will give you of $15,000. So the seller wants a guarantee that you will pay the difference between the appraisal amount and what you've offered. You can offer to cover that whole gap. You can offer to cover a gap of maybe $5,000 or $10,000 or $15,000, depending on, what the offer scenario is. You can say, no, I don't want to pay any difference, or I'm not in a financial position to pay any difference between what it's appraised at and what the asking price or what the actual contract price is. Have you been seeing many appraisal issues on homes lately?
I have not, thankfully, but knock on wood.
Well, because it's the lender, right, that sends out the appraiser. So there are a lot of tools that you could use as a buyer. You will unfortunately never know what happened in the flurry of offers, like the 28 offers. I can tell you, I've had sellers say to me, my house is just gonna sell itself. And who is putting together the Excel spreadsheet of 28 separate offers and all the details so that you could go over it, you know, and figure out what's best. But you will find out when it closes how much it went for, but you won't necessarily find out any of the other terms that were agreed to on the contract.
Cool.
Okay.
Okay, question 8.
Well, you
How
kind of
much-
covered part of this already.
Yep. How much do I need for down payment? Well, depending on the loan type, 3% to 5%. So, you know, you could do as little as 3%. You could do, now the down payment assistance programs still have a down payment associated with it. So they're still considered a down payment, but the assistance is for the down payment. So 3% for Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, 3.5% for FHA, 100% financing for VA. And then if you're not a first-time home buyer and you make too much money, then you're doing 5% down with Fannie and Freddie conventional type of loan.
That makes sense. What other fees are there besides the down payment fee?
This is very important because when you're doing your calculations, and again, you really would behoove yourself to use a professional mortgage person and definitely a professional realtor, because they will go over this with you as well and make sure there's no misunderstanding. You don't just have to come up with your down payment, and whoever you're using, you want to let them know not only how much do you have available for down payment, but how much do you have available total? Because above and beyond your down payment, you're going to need to show probably between $6,000 and $10,000 extra for closing costs and starting of your escrow and different things like that. So you're going to have origination charges, which would generally be processing fees, underwriting fees. Sometimes if you're paying points for some reason, hopefully you're not working with a lender who tries to sneak those in because they're out there. Generally, you're not going to be paying points. And I would not recommend it right now because most likely any loan you get right now, you're going to refinance within a year or two. And the amount that it costs you to buy down your interest rate is you're not going to make up that difference within a couple years. So I generally would say don't pay points to buy your rate down right now in this environment. But you're going to have title charges. The bulk of your closing costs, most of your closing costs are going to be title charges. And that title company is chosen by the seller's title company in this northern part of Illinois. And we use those because you get a very significant discount by using the same title company. And it's all done through attorneys. So there's no reason to not want to do that. And you can get your own title company, but it's going to cost you a couple $1,000s more to do that. So you have to be prepared to have that. And what Linda was talking about with the seller paying some closing costs, you can ask the seller. It's tougher in this environment when there's multiple offers, but you may, depending on the area, be able to ask the seller to give you a credit for some closing costs. Maybe not the full 5,000 or 6,000 or 10,000, but maybe less, even if it's just a couple $1,000s. Again, and depending on the area, you may not be able to ask the seller to pay some closing costs, but it's worth a discussion with your mortgage person and your realtor.
So is your new homeowner's insurance a closing cost?
Your new homeowner's insurance will be included in that number. So you'll pay 1 year upfront of homeowner's insurance, which homeowner's insurance is insurance like your car insurance in case something happens to the property. And something we didn't really touch is what your mortgage payment consists of. Your mortgage payment will consist of the principal and interest to pay back the loan, plus 1/12 of your annual real estate taxes, 1/12 of your annual homeowner's insurance bill, and then if you're paying mortgage insurance. So when you're making your mortgage payment, part of that money goes into something called an escrow account. And I like to refer to that escrow account as a little side bucket of money. So you're making that payment, some money's going into the bucket. And then as these bills come up, they take money out of the bucket, pay the tax bill, take money out of the bucket, pay your homeowner's insurance bill. So that there's enough money there that you don't have to come up with all that extra money.
But you don't always have to escrow your
No,
taxes and insurance, right?
if you have 20% down, you can choose to escrow on your own, but you must then be prepared to pay those bills when they come out. I own 3 properties, 2 of them, I have an escrow, so my mortgage company pays the tax bills and the homeowner's insurance. And then I have 1 without, and I'm in the business, I save for it, but it's always a pain to make that tax bill payment twice a year.
It's kind of nice for it to just go in,
It's
right?
It's nice having it in the payment.
And then, also you'll be, as a buyer, needing to pay for an inspection, which could be about $500. That is an upfront payment. That's not an at closing payment.
Correct.
So you'll need to pay that. You'll need to pay for that appraisal we talked about, and that's an upfront payment, isn't it? That's not,
Yes, that's upfront. Once your home inspection is done, then that's when we will order the appraisal, unless we're trying to close in 2 weeks or 3 weeks. We'll wait till that's done, because we don't want you spending money if you're not gonna buy the property based on the home inspection. And we don't want to signal to the seller that you've already spent money on an appraisal, so they're not gonna negotiate as much if something does happen to come up with the home inspection.
and we've spoken about attorneys. In this part of the world, we use an attorney for closings. They have your best interest at heart. They look over all the documentation. They record your deed. They do a lot of things for you. So we use an attorney. So those are probably all like about $500 each, right?
Look, we have a Patty.
We
site.
have a Patty. Patty sighting means there's a question.
I feel like that I'm coming up like whack-a-mole, like I'm prairie dog here. So just kind of returning back, I know that you were talking about expenses, but coming back to the issue of offers,
Yes.
we had another Q&A that came in. Are you able to read those? Because I'll
You know what? It's so small because the computer's far away. So I see it pop up, but I can't read it.
No,
very-
I'll do the other man thing. So it was, this person just wants clarification that if the seller has multiple bids on the house, isn't the
Yeah.
realtor supposed to go over all the offers with the seller before one is selected?
Yes, all offers must be presented up until the point where a contract is signed, unless the seller has already given them some kind of criteria not to present. So for in my, let's say, the highest and best situation, or the lack of highest and best situation, if the seller already has, and I'm just picking numbers out of the air, an offer for $350 and they're only worried about price, they can direct that realtor, their listing agent, not to present anything less than $350 that comes in. So that may throw a little widget into your, into what there is. But yes, all offers that are presented are supposed to be presented to the seller unless the seller has given some other direction.
Can a seller tell their agent that I don't care how many offers I get, I want to take the first one that comes in at this price, and I don't care about anything that comes in afterwards?
They could.
Good.
They could. You know, like, I mean, I was in a scenario today with a potential seller. You know, we're discussing price, right? Discussing strategy, right? But again, everything, it's their house, right? So they can tell me what I can or can't do, except if it's illegal. You know, like I can't discriminate. There are things that I can't do.
Right.
But it's their property to sell.
One more Q&A just came
Yeah.
up. How accurate are those mortgage and monthly payment calculators on platforms such as Zillow?
Well, it's a garbage in, garbage out for the most case. Like I have an app that I give out that has a mortgage calculator in it that calculates everything pretty much the same as any other mortgage calculator would calculate, except mine does the mortgage insurance estimate in there. My mortgage insurance estimate is a little bit on the high side because mortgage insurance has become so specific to the individual. So if if you enter in an interest rate, it'll calculate based on what you enter in. It will not find an interest rate for you. None of them should. But it should calculate that. It should also, whatever one you're using, allow you to put in either your down payment or your loan amount so that it's not calculating. A lot of them default to 20% down. So you think, oh, that payment's not bad. Oh, but wait a minute, they didn't include taxes. Or, oh, wait a minute, they didn't include homeowners insurance. And a lot of them forget about or don't calculate the mortgage insurance. So for the most part, the actual math part of what you input should be correct, but it might leave out things like mortgage insurance or a correct estimated homeowner's insurance, because some of them will estimate it for you when really you should be the one entering that information. And the people that use my app, I usually tell them what they should enter based on what they're looking for.
For like square footage size. I
Yeah,
think, for
a type of
insurance.
property, like if it's a condo or townhome, it might only be, $60 to $90 a month. But if it's a single family, depending on the price, it might be 125 to 150 a month. So the actual math of calculating the principal and interest based on the loan amount should be accurate, but the rest is all based on what you put in there.
Right. And I meant to bring something back up on the other slide, but this does say besides the down payment, so it reminds me about it. So you've heard us say a couple times, that when you buy a property, you're putting the money in your own pocket. And I'm not saying that literally, because of course you're paying your mortgage, but in the end, you're the one who owns the property. So you're amassing wealth, right? You're putting money in your piggy bank. So it's always better if you can. When you think about it, if you're renting, usually you have to give first and last month rent and possibly security deposit. That could very easily be your 3 to 5%, right, of something that you purchase. So it's just always smart because it's an investment in yourself. And I
Right,
meant to say that back on the other slide.
And some people, think that if their value of their property goes down, then they've lost money. But if you if you kind of think of it from this point of view, if you're paying $2,000 a month on rent, after 30 years, obviously your rent will have increased. But let's say for some reason your rent didn't. After 30 years, all that money accumulated is gone. Okay. But if you pay $400,000 for a house right now, and in 30 years you pay that mortgage off and the home is only worth 200,000, you still, even though you quote unquote lost 200,000, you are still 200,000 ahead because you now have an asset worth 200,000.
The money that you've put in your own pocket.
Even if it's only worth 100,000, you still are
I
100,000.
can't see that scenario happening.
No,
Don't scare our
it's-
friends.
It's never really happened, but the point is, it's, you're almost always in a better scenario with owning property. And that's why you see most people that are wealthy, and when they talk about wealth, it always involves some kind of real estate.
Mhm.
I don't think I know any of them that rent. Oh, I'm a millionaire, but I rent a house.
Right.
Or I don't own any real estate.
And to your earlier comment about appreciation, right, that it costs more to wait. For example, between 1921 and now, we've appreciated between 20 and 25% in the prices of homes. So that's a lot.
That's
you
huge.
know,
And that's not necessarily normal, but it is.
It is not normal. Normal is 3 to 7% maybe per year. So, so if you're thinking about it, it may be a long haul thing though, right? It may be
Right.
something that you're in for a while because inventory is low right now.
Correct. So let's see what number 10
What's
is.
number 10? When do I get the keys?
The fun day.
Fun day. Fun day, Sunday, fun day. So you've had your inspection, you've agreed on inspection issues, you've had your appraisal, that's all worked out. You applied for your mortgage, we get it clear to close, we go to the closing. Many times the seller will not be at the closing table. The seller will pre-sign. They don't necessarily need to be there. You'll be sitting there with your attorney who will advise you on all the documents you're signing, and the title company representative who's printing everything, making sure I's are dotted and T's are crossed.
And a good mortgage person will be there at the closing with you if they can.
And a good buyer's agent will be with you at the closing if they can, because you may have questions. I remember during the pandemic, I had a buyer and we weren't allowed in. There was one title company that wouldn't allow us in. And I snuck in and I gave her a little gift, and I apologized that I had to leave. And I said, all non-essential people are not, are not allowed to be in at the closing. And she said, well, of course you're essential. I said, well, thank you very much. I'd like to think so too, but so you will, before the closing, however, go through a final walkthrough with your buyer's agent. I suggest you always go as close as you can to the time of closing. So if closing is at 9 a.m., go that same morning. Don't go 2 days before because it fits your schedule. Go the same morning, because once you sign all that paperwork, that property's yours. So if you saw it Friday night and now you're closing Monday morning and you're away for the weekend, that's okay. We all have lives. I know that. But what if a pipe burst over the weekend, right? You're buying the house. You've now bought the problem, right? Because when you saw it on Friday, it was fine. So it can be very complicated. So make sure you go as close to closing as you can. You should get receipts for any repairs that were supposed to be made by the seller. You may get credits from the seller sometimes if you've negotiated those. When you do the walkthrough is when you'll check to see if the work has been done. What you can with your own eyes and your own experience and knowledge will tell you. You're checking to make sure there aren't big gouges in the walls or windows broken or anything like that. A walkthrough really isn't that long. It's probably about 15 minutes, because you're kind of just going through the house to make sure it was in the condition it was in when you inspected it, plus those improvements.
So for your money to bring to closing, once you get your clear to close, up until that point, it's just an slight overestimate of what you need to bring to closing. So when you actually get the final numbers, which is usually a day before closing, you'll have a couple options. If the amount you have to bring in is less than 50,000, then you could bring in a cashier's check. And that's usually the most secure way to do it, because there's a lot of fraud happening with wiring money. However, if it's 50,000 or over, you must wire it, and your attorney and your mortgage person will go over with you how to do that safely and securely. But you'll get that amount less than 50,000. You go to the bank on your way to the closing maybe and grab the cashier's check. Your mortgage professional or your attorney should be able to tell you who to have that cashier's check made out to, because they used to have you make it out to yourself, because that way, if the closing didn't happen, you could take that right back to the bank and redeposit it. But then these things came along, and what people were doing were having the cashier's check made out to themselves.
I'm doing what?
Then doing the photo deposit, depositing the check back into their account, and then going to the closing and giving the closer that check, as if they didn't know where to find them to go recuperate that money that they lost and prosecute them, because they just bought a house. It's not like they bought a car and they're on their way to some other state. But it happened, unfortunately. And now we let you know who to make that cashier's check out to, bring that to the closing. You sometimes make it for a little bit extra, a few $100 extra, and then they give you a check back at the closing along with your keys.
So when you receive wiring or closing instructions, always check with your lender and your attorney for any link or whatever you've been given in the world of people being able to usurp emails and
Yes, they are very good. So you might get an email from a title company that has hijacked your email, and you're looking at this piece of paper and it tells you where to wire the money. It tells the bank name and the title company. And we've had people call the number on that piece of paper to verify the wiring instructions are correct. And these tricksters change the number and put it on that sheet. And then they sit by the phone and wait for you to call. And they answer the phone as your title company, even though they're in Taiwan or something.
This is why your lender and your attorney know
Yeah.
for sure.
So I always recommend that you Google the number or get the number from a third-party source. Don't call the number on the wiring instructions, and then double verify all the information. So if you're using, legitimate, really good professionals from the mortgage and attorney and your realtor, you should not have an issue, knock on wood. But just make sure you do your due diligence and CYA.
And in this, so you've heard us talk about having an inspection and having a lender and having an attorney and working through the title company. And your real estate professional will have referrals, most likely, for all of those professionals that she or he has worked with and knows will get you from start to finish seamlessly.
So whatever professional you happen to contact first, they are not gonna generally refer you to somebody that's not gonna do a good job, because they're a team.
This is why I say Google them still.
Yeah.
Just in case.
Yeah, Google them to make it for your own peace of mind, but your realtor is not gonna refer you an attorney that's not gonna do a good job for you.
Because what that
That's
bodes poorly against me,
Reflection.
right? I see another question. All I see is the one. I can't read it.
I think, let's see.
Guess who's back?
Please, man.
Would it be better to go through a bank or an independent mortgage broker?
That's a great question.
Well, I'm gonna be biased towards the independent mortgage broker. However, so I'll give a little bit of background about me and my company. I am a banker. So we are a broker as well. So we find different companies that fit your needs and get you the best interest rate based on your scenario. But then we also fund the loans ourselves. As with a regular a broker does not fund the loan. They don't control the closing. So sometimes you have a lot of issues with closings when dealing with just a broker. Now, one of the benefits of using a banker, or a broker would be that your scenario may require something that an independent bank might not do.
Banks have lots of overlays and
Yeah,
stuff, right?
they
that
call it
change-
overlays.
Yeah.
For example, certain banks might have a higher credit score threshold. So those banks and the people that work there might not know that out there in the world of mortgages, you can go down to 620 on a conventional loan and your credit scores, because that bank requires a 700 credit score. So they might tell you that, oh, you can't get a loan, for less because your credit scores aren't 700. And you go home with your tail between your legs because you think that you have bad credit and no one's going to lend you money to buy a house. When it's just that bank's criteria. That bank might not allow 3% down. This bank might not like condo financing. So when you go to one specific bank, all you have is their guidelines.
Plus, you only have the programs that they sell or that
Correct.
they use.
If they don't work with 3% down buyers, or if they don't like to work with condos, then you're kind of stuck.
Now, I'm not telling you, and I'm sure Jean isn't either, that if you have a good relationship with your bank or your banker, your mortgage professional at that bank, not to talk to them about it. You'd interview them just like you'd interview anybody else, right? For the job. However, they can be very limited. I'd also caution you in that you can walk into a bank that's a very well-established bank, but you could have someone working the mortgage portion of the bank, right, of that job that doesn't have very much experience. And is just going by the guidelines that the bank offers, right? And that too can bode poorly for you. It can cause troubles when you move down the line. We've had some luckily, knock on wood, you know, of course, I use whatever lender the buyer comes to me with. If you have Uncle Charlie who works at this bank or, you know, or whatever, we'll use that. However, there are benefits to using someone who is not, chained to bank hours, right? I know that I love my bank, but my bank hours since the pandemic are like 9 to 5, like you can't go after work, and on Saturdays they like close at noon, right? And they're not really conducive to me being able to talk to somebody all the time.
I got a call from a realtor last Sunday after 7 o'clock at night saying that they had a highest and best, and their buyers were pre-approved with a bank and they couldn't get a hold of the bank, and they were going to lose this house if they didn't have an updated pre-approval letter. So I was able to talk to them, get them pre-approved on that Sunday night, get their offer in, and they actually won and purchased that property.
Right.
They're in the process of getting their home inspection done now and all that. So, you know, you might find bank professionals that do work Sundays or do work till 10 or 11 o'clock at night, like most brokers, bankers will. And if that's the case, that's great, because you're in this market, you're definitely going to need that, because the listing agent is going to call those mortgage professionals, and they generally will call in the evenings to verify your pre-approval letter, and they need to be able to get a hold of you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Hope that answered your question. Look at that. Are there any more questions? I know that we've covered a lot. We can't absolutely cover everything. We've given you some materials through Patty, through the library, to help you answer some more questions or for reference. I know one of the ones that I sent along was the steps to like the home buying process. If you have any questions, you can always feel free to reach out to us. We don't twist arms, you know. We're here. We believe in our community and supporting our community. That's why we're doing this, for the patrons of the library. And
Even if you're using somebody else and you just have questions,
like a double check on something, if
Yeah,
something's
feel
feeling
free.
off. Yeah,
feel free to get a hold of us.
absolutely.
We're always available, day and night.
Absolutely. Yeah. Maybe not 24/7.
Well, we are going to allow a few moments just for questions, because I still see that everybody is on the webinar. I do want to thank both of you very, very much for bringing this, for bringing you as a duo to the duo topic.
We're glad to bring, it's so
Will we
important.
get this as email afterwards, by anonymous attendee? Will we get this as email?
If you
could
want
please
the
send it to
slides,
me,
I
I'm
could
not
send
sure-
I could send the slides, Patty, if you want the slides. It's
The
not a big
slides?
deal.
Okay,
Yeah.
if that's what they're asking for, that's your call. If you want to.
Yep, I can do that.
Okay. If you want to send that to me, and then
Yep.
I will gladly send that out as a BCC. You can make it into a PDF if you choose. That would.
Will do. Yep.
But yes, this recording will be up in its entirety, likely tomorrow. That's what I'm aiming for. But if anyone else has any more questions for Jean Walters or Linda Dressler, you are most welcome to reach out to them directly. You know, you can always reach out to me, but I am not available 24/7. I am not a full service librarian. I do have a home I'm going to return to once the library closes for the night, but I'll be thinking of it bright and early tomorrow.
When you can find us on Facebook, so you could always message us there too. It's the easy way to do it if you want to, but of course you'll have our information from the slides. We have a page together on Facebook, Hoffman Estates Real Estate. Of course, I have Linda Dressler, Remax Suburban, and we have Gene Walters, the mortgage guy from Home Trust Mortgage.
Yep, Gene the Mortgage Guy, or Gotham'sMortgageGuy.com.
Gotham's, is that a new one? Batman here. What do you
I'm
know?
a big Batman fan.
Well, you know, Jean, I admire that very much, because anyone that knows librarians know that as long as many of my colleagues are big Batgirl fans, because Batgirl was a librarian, we
That's
have
right.
the greatest respect for Barbara Gordon. So we kind of speak
Yes.
that language. But we also speak the language of the chamber. And that's where I want to mention to everybody, when you're asking why I select the presenters that I do for the library, it is because they are proven presenters. They are very interested in bringing this information to the library for information and educational purposes. Yes, they are business people, but they are also giving of their time and their energy and their talents to the Chamber of Commerce, as well as to the library community. So for that, I want to say thank you to you both.
Thank you, Patty.
Thank you, and you're welcome.
And thank you everyone for being on the call. I'm going to bring it to a close. before the motion sensors put me in the dark again. Good night,
Bye,
everyone.
everybody. Thanks for coming.
Everybody,
Feel
thank
free
you.
to reach out, okay?